What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about actual legitimate numbers for Astro Bot. We finally got them, and I'm pretty excited to go over them. And honestly, I mean, the game seems to have been a pretty big success. It seems to have targeted the group that they wanted to, and actually, there's kind of a surprising stat that we'll read here as well. By the way, really quick before I get too far in, if you guys are interested or questioning, hey, Alex, there was other PlayStation stuff, we'll talk about the single-player games and their metrics and all that jazz. Okay, so in terms of Astro, there's 3 bullet points. Astro Bot, which released on September 6th, has received a Metacritic score of 94 and has garnered high praise from the gamer community. It is a hit which has sold over 1.5 million copies in the 9 weeks since its release. 37% of the users who purchased Astro Bot had not purchased a first-party title from us in the last 2 years. The percentage of younger age groups and families purchasing the title was much higher than other titles, and the title is contributing significantly to a widening of the user base through the acquisition of new users and the expansion of our title portfolio. So I don't really know what else you really need to hear, right? I think those last two kind of speak for themselves. I mean, the sales, 1.5, right? I think 1.5 is pretty good. You got to think about the size of this game. You got to think about the size under 100 people, right, from Team Asobi, and, you think that the game probably only needed to do, high in the 100,000 or maybe even like a million to break even. Like, I imagine the game is already technically earning them money because the budget was just, significantly smaller. And we're talking about, I mean, it's kind of accurate until like the day. Like, I think it's through November 3rd or something, right? So, like, it's pretty close to where we are right now, but, it doesn't have Black Friday to help it, and it doesn't have the holiday, Christmas and stuff. So, could this game get to 2 million before the end of this year? I think that's pretty possible. And then, it's a game that should have legs, right? I mean, you hear about, actually today, yesterday, day before, we're seeing a lot of these games getting updated sales figures, right? Like Resident Evil games continue to sell years and years and years later, and so on and so on, many different types of games. So for Astro, I'm not saying you expect it to do like 2-3 million every year, but can this thing get to 3 or maybe even, 4 by next holiday? Can it get to, will we say at the end of its lifetime that this game did 4, 5, 6 million units? I think it honestly is possible. It's got to have those long legs. It's got to continue to bring new people in. But you know what? I really think it's a perfect game for, like, you buy a PS5, right? And you say, okay, well, what are the recommendations? I mean, I know, 66 million people have the PS5, but okay, you still got, 10, 20, 30 million more people that are probably going to get it in the next couple of years. You get it, and you say, well, what are, like, the must-haves for it? And I would say also, what's the must-haves for, like, a younger generation, right? You could give the Horizons and God of War and Spider-Man, Final Fantasy, so on, right? But then you say, okay, well, I got a 12-year-old that got it, right? And I mean, I think about myself. I got a PS3 right before I turned 13, so I was technically 12. What are games that, can they get a blend? Can they also enjoy God of War? Sure. But, like, what other games? Well, there's Ratchet and Clank, right? I mean, you have the Returnals of the world, too, on the older age demographic. But, like, Ratchet and Astro, right? Like, those would be the ones, at least in my head right now, that I would recommend to, hey, I got a 10, 12, 14-year-old at home. They just got it. They want a blend of games, platformer, right? Like, what could they get? I think Astro is going to be a game that is like a bundle type game. I think Astro is a game that people are going to say, yeah, I got my PS5. What's a good first recommendation? And you tell them Astro Bot. I think that's kind of what helps this game over the next really 3-4 years until the PS6 comes out, okay? Now, the other two, that 37%, that is like really, I guess, shocking, and also just kind of came out of left field, which actually I think made it shocking. So, I just mentioned some of these games, right? Last 2 years. So God of War Ragnarok is included in that because that came out, within that 2 year. God of War, Spider-Man, Final Fantasy, I guess both 16 and Rebirth, Horizon. So you actually have quite a few really big games that fall in that group of, first-party stuff that came out in the last 2 years. 37% of people that got Astro did not purchase any of those, right? They did not get Spider-Man. They didn't get God of War. That is pretty insane, actually. Now, I guess the next, bullet point, right, that final one, they can identify that it's younger people and families. And you would, now, I think younger people and families, like, I think Spider-Man is specifically a game that kind of targets everybody, and that's part of the reason why it does so well. I don't know if a younger person or a family would do, like, a God of War. I mean, at the same time, I think I played God of War 3 when I was 13 13, 14 years old. But, we don't really know what younger means by their metrics. But, that is kind of surprising that it's like, wow, the people that are buying Astro, I mean, 37%, that's more than a third. Like, that is a good amount of people that got Astro, and they did not get any other first-party game in the last 2 years. Now, you know what? They say last 2 years. I wonder, like, okay, well, can they find the crossover between Astro and Ratchet? I mean, I'm sure they could, right? Because you can look at all the data, the behind-the-scenes stuff. They can see in your account that you played Ratchet versus playing, Astro. I'm sure they can tell if you bought it versus PlayStation Plus or anything like that, right? So I'm sure they could find it. But I wonder, like, out of everybody that did Ratchet, like, what's the percentage that came over to also do Astro? And also, was Ratchet and Clank the same thing, right? People that bought Ratchet, did they play Returnal? Did they play some of those earlier, Demon Souls, right? Kind of the first 2 years of the PS5. That's just something that kind of is interesting, I guess, in my head. But, really good. Really, really good. Happy for its success. Hopefully it shows PlayStation, at least in those last two, right? Where it's like, diversify. And that was the ending of that third bullet point, right? Diversify, build out that portfolio. You've got other games, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper. There's other ones. I mean, yeah, I also focus on the Infamous and Resistance and Killzone, and that's also for a different demographic. But if you're targeting kids, if you want that family dynamic, if you want the platformers, if you want these games small budget but they sell well over time, you've got a couple more in you. And I mean, it's time. It really is. Bring me Sly Cooper. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.